That was a terrible high five. Hi, everyone. Welcome to First Things First. You can't start a Tuesday with a terrible high five. That is the lesson of the day. I'm Jenna Wolfe. That is the Hall of Famer Cris Carter. That's a real handshake. This is Nick Wright.
Well, Jenna Wolfe, how are you?
Very good. You got me the double. How is everybody doing?
Good. I'm doing great. I learned a lot about television this morning.
You did?
I figured out what I've been show 171. I didn't know what a tease was. Learned that this morning via Jenna Wolfe.
Let me just.
Tomorrow we're gonna go over segues. At some point, we're going to do transitions.
You guys coordinated your outfits. They look very nice. Danielle and Christine did a tremendous
to jump off
job.
That corner real
Absolutely,
fast.
yeah.
Real fast.
The best dressed people in morning television.
Well, I'll take that compliment. I will.
No doubt. As I always say, eat it, Morning Joe. Take that.
Listen, I'm not saying that because those are my people over there.
Sure, they're great people, just not as well dressed as us, according to Cris Carter.
Double portion. Eat it.
Eat it, Morning Joe.
I'm the one that came up with it.
Yeah.
We are the best dressed in morning
Jenna
television.
Wolfe trying to say both corners.
I got more friends in morning TV than you. But let's get to
eat it, Jenna Wolfe.
I don't even understand I don't even know what we're talking about here. Okay. I will tell you that of the three of us, and I know this won't go far, so I'll say it. One of us thought that maybe the Celtics had a shot of winning last night. Just one of us thought that the Celtics could win the game last night.
There was only one of us?
There was only one of us that thought the Celtics could.
Oh, that's interesting, because one of us bet Celtics +5. Was that you?
That was
because I feel like I'm a little bit richer this morning from that game.
I bet Celtics +5.
No, you didn't. That's a lie.
It was billed as the next
bookie. I know you didn't.
In a storied rivalry between these two teams. They've met 19 times in the playoffs. Celtics have won 12 of the meetings, but ask anyone except the Celtics, and they'd tell you this one was supposed to go the way of the Sixers. Stronger team, faster team, healthier team, and yet last night, losing team. Despite 31 out of Joel Embiid, Boston still beat Philly 117-101. Celtics got 29 points out of Terry Rozier, and he spoke about it after the game.
It's been a dream come true, and I want to keep going. I'm a guy that, just living in the moment. Like Coach said, never trying to get too high, never trying to get too low. And, I'm gonna keep going for sure.
It starts on defense. I thought I thought we were all bad tonight, so that's not what we are, definitely. I think, when everybody is on, we're the best defensive team in the game, and, there's a lot of stuff with game plan that we didn't execute.
So he went through a whole list of reasons why he felt the Sixers didn't lose: defense, effort, execution. They didn't just lose. I mean, the Celtics pretty much dominated them. How do you think that was able to happen in Game 1, CC?
It's a make-or-miss league. Making shots, especially three-point shots, especially in the NBA, because it's about pace and space. They had the spacing. They knocked down shots. I mean, if you look at Marcus Smart and the center for the Celtics,
Aaron Baines.
I think they had 5 3-pointers between them. They matched Philadelphia's productivity. They had 4 or 5 3-pointers themselves. So Philadelphia only had 5. What has Philadelphia done to get here? Because people, they watch one game and be like, wow, you try to analyze that game, but what did they do to get here? They were one of the best defensive teams, if not the best defensive team in basketball, with Joel Embiid arguably being the best defender and making threes. That's what they did. They weren't very good on the defensive end, meaning they couldn't figure out the sets that Boston was running at them. They had a game plan for it, but they didn't execute the game plan the way the coach had anticipated, letting Boston score 56 points in the first half. What has Boston struggled with? What's their weakest part? Besides, we know the injuries, the talent. They shooting the basketball. Offensively, they're challenged at points. They knocked down a bunch of shots. Brad Stevens had a tremendous game plan for what they were trying to do. Philadelphia never adjusted in the second half, but this year, Jenna, there's been 33 contests where a team made 12 more three-pointers
than their opponent.
Yes, and the opposition that had the deficit, they only won 3 times. So last night, Boston, 12 more, 36 points from the three-point line. That was the difference in this game. If Boston shoots the ball like this, they've been a different team. That's why they've been so competitive with the best teams in the league. But go ahead, Nick.
The difference was definitely what you're talking about, the 36-point deficit on the three-point line. What I find so interesting is how the Celtics were able to create that difference. I understand Philly missed some open shots, but Boston also was not giving them the looks they wanted because they refused to double Embiid. They said, and Brad Stevens is one of the few coaches that during those quarter breaks when you talk to the coach will actually teach you some things, give you some real information. He flat out said it. He said, we will sacrifice the two. We are not giving up threes.
Joel Embiid will get some good looks because we will defend the three-point line.
So part of it was good fortune by Boston that Philly missed some open shots, but also they were not allowing Philly to get the shots they wanted. And then on the other side, this game to me, in addition to three-point shooting and Boston's three guys playing great, and Horford, Tatum, and Rozier, the story is Joel Embiid on both sides of the ball. That the Celtics defensively decided, we'll let Embiid get 30 as long as he is not kicking out to open three-point shooters. But then also the way the Celtics neutralized him as a defender.
Yep.
What you saw is when Aaron Baines was in the game, Aaron Baines not trying to post up Joel Embiid. He's standing in the corner. Aaron Baines can hit that shot. He's not a great three-point shooter, but you have to respect it. So now all of a sudden, Joel Embiid has to shade him to the corner, and the Celtics were just playing 4-on-4 on the other side of the court. You remove the best rim defender in the Eastern Conference from his ability to protect the rim, and that's how you can score 117 points against these guys.
Nick makes a great point. What they did was they took Baines out of the pick and roll. All right? If he's out of the pick and roll, that means he's in the corner. That means that Joel Embiid, he can't help two people over. If he was one person over, like if he was guarding Horford, or if Baines was in the pick and roll, he would be at the top of the key, which would also make him flow down into the lane. With him being in the corner, it was a great game plan. And you also saw that Joel Embiid, he started getting a little anxious. He started trying to help too much, and the Celtics countered, taking advantage of him helping out and freelance on the defensive end.
The one thing you both mentioned was Brad Stevens. How much of what happened last night was because of the way that the Boston Celtics head coach managed this game plan with the guys that they didn't have, much less with the guys that they did?
Right. I'm going to be careful because I know Nick is really excited about Coach Stevens and what he does there, because a coach isn't on the floor making shots. A coach is,
he barely had his players on the floor.
The coach is not defending people. The coach is not under the gun like the guys, all right? You have to give the Celtics players, especially their role players, and for years, since I've been watching the NBA, which is a long, long time, Boston Celtics role players, Danny Ainge, they play so much better at home. This is not just this team. Look at the role players, how well they played last night. We know they have significant injuries, but this has been a theme for the team. We can give, yes, they were prepared for the game. Yes, did they have a counterpunch to Philadelphia, what they were doing? Yes, but the players, Rozier, Tatum, you got to give a lot of the credit to what they did.
All right, so you brought up a lot of important points there. One is home road. So the Celtics in these playoffs, they've played 8 games. They are undefeated at home. They haven't won yet on the road. So don't discount how important that home crowd in Boston is. The other is the guys. Rozier, Tatum, Horford. They combined last night for more points as a trio than Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and Kevin Garnett ever did. Wow. Ever in a playoff or a regular season game. More points combined than those 3 guys ever did. They all scored 23 points. The first Celtics trio to do that in a playoff game since Parrish, Mikal Bird in 1987. Only the 3rd Celtics trio to ever do it in a playoff game. So those guys were great. Where I will give Brad Stevens credit, and where much like CC to Donovan Mitchell is me to Brad Stevens, on the corner early and often trying to alert people how special this player or this coach is. What Brad Stevens is, in my eyes, right now, the best in the league at is putting guys in position to do what they do well. You have a GM in Danny Ainge that knows who his coach is and says, okay, I can take a guy like Terry Rozier, who people thought was a project, people thought was a reach when we picked him out of Louisville. He will be coached up in order to reach his full maximum potential. And then when he gets the opportunity, he's going to go out there and all of a sudden give me a poor man's Kyrie Irving level production on offense in a critical game, because we are asking him to do what he does well. The way Brad Stevens empowers Marcus Smart. This team all year is one team with Marcus Smart, one team without Marcus Smart. All the numbers back that up. They know what I know, that Marcus Smart is literally the worst three-point shooter in the history of professional basketball. They will allow him to shoot some threes because he wants to.
And the other role players, because it continues to spread the court. He empowers them that whoever's playing the role, you can shoot the ball. That doesn't happen. A guy who subs for Kyrie Irving when he was injured in Cleveland, you couldn't get 18 shots. But he accounts for the shots and productivity into the role that he's asking you to play.
And what that does is, because Marcus Smart likes shooting threes, you let him do that, all of a sudden he's getting you all the hustle plays, the and ones, the offensive rebounds, the diving on the floor that makes them a different team. This was a team that won without Jaylen Brown. That was when you mentioned nobody thought Boston had a chance in this game. The real question was, well, if they don't have Jaylen Brown, how can they have enough talent? They not only won last night, as Brett Brown put it, they dominated the game. He said he thought the Sixers were never in that basketball game. It's an enormous win. And all of a sudden, it's another reminder. See, that the playoffs are supposed to be hard. The Cavs and the Warriors last year made us forget that once you get to the semifinals in the playoffs, it's supposed to be hard. They're supposed to go 6 or 7 games, and all of a sudden we got a series in Boston.
And this one will too.
All right, Celtics take game 1, game 2 slated for Thursday nights. Coming up, switch gears, talk some football. Hey, why isn't Tom Brady feeling appreciated in New England? That's a tease. That's next on First Things First. Topic now, it should come as no surprise that the guy who loves football more than anything wants to keep playing football more than anything. Tom Brady, the soon-to-be 41-year-old MVP, confirmed he will be back next season. We all assume that. What we didn't know is the way he apparently feels about how much he's appreciated there. In a conversation with Jim Gray, Brady alluded to issues with the organization.
Do you feel appreciated by them, and do they have the appropriate gratitude for what you have achieved?
I plead the fifth. Look, man, that is a tough question. Yeah, I mean,
your wife seems to indicate.
I think everybody in general wants to be appreciated more at work.
Are you happy?
I have my moments.
Well, interesting. It was sort of a joke, but it sort of wasn't. And sometimes there's always some truth to something like that. Cece, what was your reaction to Tom Brady's comments?
For one, Tom knew the question was coming. The reason why. The gentleman that's doing the interview is one of Tom's friends. He interviews him every Monday night for Monday Night Football, has done it for years. It's a great interview. It's one of the few that Tom does outside the setting of New England and the beat reporters. So it's not like the question surprised him. What I took the fifth as, because I've seen Tom when they won the last Super Bowl, and at the ring ceremony, Tom brought his other 4 Super Bowl rings, and that was one of the few times that you saw Tom take a picture and he had all 5 and he put up 5. And to me, I took the answer as, are you appreciated by New England? He said, I take the 5th. Same number of Super Bowls he had. I didn't believe that he answered it saying, I take the 5th. I don't want to answer because I might incriminate myself. I believe Tom Brady said, I take the 5th. I put 5 Super Bowl trophies in there. So I believe that was the real answer compared to what other people are going to think, because I'm very familiar with Tom. Tom's very comfortable in this setting. And I know he knew what the questions were before he got up there.
But he also, I totally agree he knew what the questions were. Like my gut feeling was he wanted that question asked. Like, because Jim Gray and he, not only does he do this interview, the interviews you're talking about on Monday Night Football, that Larry Fitzgerald has also done one the last few years along with Jim Gray on Monday Night Footballs with Westwood One. But Tom Brady's done this event with Jim Gray each year. I remember there was one right after Deflategate that was a big story where some news came out of it. Tom Brady knew this was coming. I think Tom Brady wanted this question asked. And if you watched, I read as many of the quotes as were released from this, watched as much of this as I could as was on the internet. He was very honest about everything. And he was complimentary of Bill Belichick. He was complimentary of the organization.
Yeah, I mean, what else is he supposed to say?
Right.
Like, I mean, are we surprised by that?
No, but I don't think we can disregard what I think is an honest answer, which is, I'm not comfortable answering if I feel appreciated. Because it's an easy answer to say, oh, yes, of course I'm appreciated. To me, I think Tom Brady, rightfully, by the way, feels like, no, I'm probably a little underappreciated. Like, I'm probably a little bit, aside from by the owner, considered a little more interchangeable than I actually am. Like, some of these rules that apply to all Patriots at this point shouldn't apply to me. And I understand he has the 5 Super Bowl rings. I understand it's a cool play on words, but we also know what pleading the 5th means. I don't want to answer that for fear of incriminating
But it's with
myself.
the friend. He wouldn't have him. You said he wanted the question asked.
Yes.
He wouldn't answer that way if he dictated the interview and said, "Hey, ask me this question." Mm-hmm. He wouldn't take the fifth saying, "I don't want to incriminate myself." He would have told him not to ask the question.
Unless he wanted, unless he wanted this out there without having to say, "No, I'm not appreciated." This is a good way to get the conversation going. What's up, Jenna?
I may be out on an island with this one, but normally I understand at least a little bit where Tom Brady is coming from, where both of you coming from. But this to me, and I read it all different ways, just like you do, and I listened to it, and I walked away from this saying, enough already. Like, we get it. You're aging. You still want to play football. Just play football. Like, let's not worry about whether Tom Brady is appreciated or not. Let's not worry whether your feelings are hurt or whether you're wanted there when you walk in or if you're fully committed. Like, this is your job. Go in and play football. And when you're done playing football, then stop playing football.
Jenna,
that's how I felt about it.
Right. You don't like when athletes talk. Like
no, that is not true.
You don't like when athletes.
I want them to do their job with as much fervor and gusto as they can.
No one's in the history of the league done it.
Wait a second.
Yeah.
Part of your job as one of the best athletes in the world is also connect enough with the fan base because it helps the overall popularity of the sport. We can't tell athletes do your job because that is a part of his job.
Of course.
That sounded like a complaint to me.
So is he not? Hold on. Let's say it was for a moment. That's not okay. If he's not allowed to complain, who is?
Listen,
we just don't live. We don't give people or appropriate them the same thing we appropriate everyone else if he can't complain. Now, I don't believe Tom Brady was complaining. I got a pretty good read on New England and how they do things in their answers. To me, I believe the fifth was about the 5 Super Bowl rings. But I'll ask you guys this. Y'all tell me. Let's go over the world's greatest athletes. Y'all tell me one that feels appreciated. Go through them, any sport. And you tell me one that feels like they're appreciated. Let's start with your favorite one. Wait, LeBron.
No.
Oh, okay. What about Steph Curry? What about Durant? What about Durant?
I don't know, but Steph might. Steph's a good one.
What about Aaron Rodgers?
Rodgers doesn't.
Oh,
sure.
Okay. Keep going. So there aren't any athletes out there that are at that level that, you know what, they wake up in the morning and say, you know something, everyone appreciate me. No, they're always looking for a chip. They're always looking for a little edge. That is a part of being great and being elite. Maybe people don't understand that, but it's a game that they play with themselves. When you get to the level that most of these guys are competing at, they're not competing against coverage, against a rush. They're competing against their own mentality and their own success.
I guess I would have loved the answer, not that you're asking, but the answer I would have loved would have been like, I know he planted the question, or maybe we think he planted the question, would have been, I don't care. I don't care if I'm appreciated or not. I know what I've done, and I know what I can do.
That wouldn't be true, though.
That's the thing is, why do you want these guys to lie to you? I got to understand this.
I don't want them to complain. It's the same issue I have with Kevin Durant. I don't want to hear you complain. You have an unbelievable opportunity to play in an unbelievable sport.
Jenna, everyone at this desk has an unbelievable job. That is, we are so lucky to have. And ain't no complaints? Is that what we're saying? No, there's no, oh, it could be better here. Like, why do you want these guys to not be honest with you? He's doing this interview knowing he's doing it to let you.
I want you to be honest, but I'm allowed to react to that honesty. I want to hear it. Of course I want to hear it. But that's my reaction to it.
Our expectations of athletes are just not realistic. Tom Brady tried to give us a little something, and what are we going to do? We're going to tear it apart. You want the reason why he don't talk a lot? It's just because of this stuff like this.
Sorry, Tom. Coming up, can the Raptors take advantage of a fatigued LeBron James? That's next on First.
Hey, Joe, can you get the camera? Dusty, I need better stats. Olivia, I need coffee, hot, cold.
You feel unappreciated.
Hey, Ketta.
Wait, you're unappreciated?
I know y'all appreciate me. I know.
All right, moving on to the NFL. The Buffalo Bills drafted Josh Allen out of Wyoming with the number 7 overall pick, but that doesn't mean they're just going to hand him the starting job. Their GM says Allen will begin the season as their number 3 quarterback. CC, will he stay there, and for how long?
Well, I don't think he's going to stay there, but that's where he should start. when you have a depth chart, it's important that you get people before you start practices because he'll be working with certain units. Nathan Peterman, he's there as the second teamer. We know who their starter is in A.J. McCarron. This is where rookie's supposed to start. They said the same thing for Cleveland's press conference. This is where they are. He'll get a chance to compete with A.J. McCarron. He will be the backup once they start the season, but A.J. McCarron thinks he will be the starter. So for me, I think this is one of the tougher spots for a rookie to be in.
Well, that's the key. I agree that you're going to start at third on the depth chart. He'll pass Peterman shortly, and then he and McCarron will be battling for
Actually,
that starting
Peterman
spot.
just threw an interception, another one.
Exactly right. So, but every single guy in that quarterback room is fighting for what they believe is their NFL life or their NFL destiny. Like that Peterman's trying to prove he has a spot in this league and that he's not the guy that's going to throw 5 picks on 17 attempts as he did in his first game. A.J. McCarron's trying to prove I should have been a starter all along. Josh Allen's trying to prove all the draft nicks wrong about accuracy in college. Like, there isn't a Josh McCown. There isn't a guy, even a Tyrod Taylor, who's gotten paid some money, who's had some success in this level, but recognizes where he is in reference to Baker Mayfield. Like, it's a tough situation to be drafted into for a guy who I think has the biggest learning curve of any of the quarterbacks.
All right, moving on to the Vikings. Cornerback Terrence Newman re-signed with Minnesota for his 16th season in the NFL. He'll be 39 this year. 39! CZ, how impressive is this?
Oh, it's very impressive. They love him in the Vikings locker room. He's been a tremendous leader for them and has also continued to play at a high level. You don't see skilled guys. You don't see wide receivers. You don't see defensive backs. You don't see running backs playing at this advanced age. So it's amazing. But what he means to the Vikings, he is one of 4 corners now since they drafted Hughes from UCF that is a first-round draft pick that the Vikings have on their roster. So he has been a valuable commodity to Mike Zimmer installing his defensive system. Newman followed him over, had some history with him in Cincinnati, also in Dallas. So it's instrumental to coaches like Zim that they have those warriors like Newman who can give that message to the younger players.
The only difference is for Terrence Newman, when he was drafted, the draft wasn't on television yet. They delivered the results via telegram. I mean, this is, I can't believe he's still in the
So
league.
what were they doing when I got drafted?
I mean, that was...
Yeah, that was not a good... That was not good.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, you need to plead the fifth.
I need to plead the fifth.
Yeah.
Smoke signals, I think, is how they delivered your
that's
draft
why you
notice.
got that smoky eye.
Okay, fair enough. Point that I'm making, trying to make, is this. I don't know that he'll be on the roster day one, but because they spent another high draft pick on another corner, like having them him as a mentor in the offseason, having them, it's worth whatever little bit of bonus money they gave him, even if they end up cutting him. But to be able to play that position in year 16, it's remarkable. And he played at a decent level last year in year 15.
All right, finally moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers. They drafted a potential replacement for Ben Roethlisberger and former Oklahoma State quarterback Mason Rudolph. Here's what Rudolph had to say about playing with Big Ben.
Well, I felt like whatever situation, whether it was, a team where I had to start day one, I could have done that, and I could have done it at a high level. But, obviously going to relish the opportunity to learn from somebody like that. It's not Ben's, job to teach me. It's my job to learn from, whatever resources I can, can gather information from. So, that's the way I'm going to approach it. I'm going to, work my butt off.
That could be words that Mason Rudolph is saying to sort of indoctrinate himself into the Steelers locker room. Or the question is there a responsibility on the behalf of Ben Roethlisberger, CC, to mentor a young quarterback coming in?
I just say as an NFL player, being a veteran, there's a certain amount of responsibility that we have in trying to teach the game in the way the organization has done things. There's a certain thing, how we're going to interact in the community, how we're going to treat our teammates in the locker room. All those things become very, very important. You don't have the great history of our league if guys don't mentor other guys. So, yes, in a certain sense, there is a tremendous responsibility that we as veteran players, and we owe to the guys who did it for us, to kind of teach us the way of being a professional athlete. Now, when you get in the meeting room, it depends on the player. It's up to that player what he's going to do. That's outside of his job description. Unless the organization has come to you and said, listen, this is a role that we expect you to play. Rudolph's got the right mentality, though, because if you think that he is going to help you and that's his job to help you, then you're going to be in for a rude awakening. Most veterans are going to do limited as far as classroom study, especially early in a guy's career. You don't want to overwhelm them. You don't want to have too many voices talking to the younger players. So he's right. It's not Ben's responsibility to teach him how to play the game. But Ben Roethlisberger knows this the same way he inherited that Pittsburgh job, the same way I got my job. There were a lot of veteran players in that locker room wherever we went that helped us get acclimated from college football to being a real pro.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you about. Everyone, I think, knows this way when you were the mentor, when you helped Randy. But I want to go the other side of it. When you first got to Philadelphia, or maybe when you first got to Minnesota, either place, is there a guy that sticks out in your mind, a guy that took you under his wing and helped you out, you get acclimated to the pros?
Yeah, Mike Quick in Philadelphia. He had made five of his first 7 Pro Bowls, had knee injuries, so we never really had the opportunity to play together for a long period of time. But Mike, man, he showed me the ropes. Like what happened to me in Philadelphia, it wasn't Mike Quick's fault, because he told me everything that needed to happen. Reggie White, man, we had a great group of guys. Randall Cunningham, Keith Byers, Keith Jackson, Jerome Brown. But Mike Quick, as a wide receiver, really taught me about how to be a pro, which routes to run, how I would be able to carve my niche into the league. Mike's he's still doing the radio with Merrill Reese there in Philadelphia. Jenna, you know Mike from your days there. So, yes.
Well, the reason I ask is this. I understand it's not guys' responsibilities, but when you're Ben Roethlisberger, the only organization you've ever played with is Pittsburgh. You've been to 3 Super Bowls with them. You won 2 of them. You're going to be in their Ring of Honor. You're an all-time great Steeler. That is the team your legacy is attached to. Aren't they better off long-term if he puts his arm around this guy as early as possible, even if he's trying to hold him off from the starting job? This is a guy they spent a high draft pick on. Ben's in year 15. I'm not saying Ben has the obligation to do it, but isn't that what the organization's hoping he does?
I think the organization, they invest money to be able to keep the legacy of the organization going. I just think there's some things that when you get to a locker room, it's just not cut and dry like that. When Ben drops back, they call a play. Ben drops back. He might help him, tell him, man, this is what I'm looking at. The strong safety, I'm looking for him to show some color. If he don't show me no color, I'm going to the flat. That's the kind of help that I believe, especially initially, that Ben will do those types of things. But telling me that's his responsibility, that's just a little far, because a guy's going to take your job. So they drafted a guy to take your job. The amount of capital that you put into that guy might determine if you're going to play an extra year or 2. So it's a hard relationship to manage.
I just think Ben feels underappreciated with the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I guarantee you Ben does. That's why he talked about walking away and quitting. Absolutely. I don't know anyone. I don't know a television host either that feels appreciated.
Plead the 5th or something. Hey, barely rested after barely winning Game 7 against the Pacers. The Cavaliers are back at it again tonight. Game 1
LeBron
against
complaining too. He said they got to play somebody else.
against top-seeded Toronto. If this new-look Cavs team needs a quick history lesson, here it is. Cleveland eliminated Toronto the past 2 seasons. But this is a different Toronto team, and this is, definitely a different Cleveland team. Thank you, Captain Obvious. Nick, what is the key to LeBron and the Cavs advancing past the Raptors?
Some help. This is not a series where you can say, all we got to do is have LeBron average 42 in the wins again and we're fine. Like, could LeBron do against the Raptors what he did against Indiana? I actually think he probably could. I think the Raptors have fewer bodies to throw at him defensively. I think the Raptors, we've seen it, they don't have a Thad Young, a guy that's LeBron's height and so thick. They don't have guys, a pest like Lance Stevenson. There's a reason that one of the big reasons the Cavs have owned the Raptors in the last few years is nobody matches up well with LeBron, right? But the Raptors match up particularly poorly with LeBron. So I think he could do what he did against Indiana. But that's no recipe for the Cavs to make the NBA Finals. That's no recipe for the Cavs to have high-level success. So what they need in this series and what they need in Game 1 is Kevin Love to come back. Kevin Love to whatever happened to him over the last few weeks, for that to be done. He doesn't have to be 20-12 Kevin Love, but he can't be 11-9 on 33% shooting Kevin Love. They need that. They need Tristan Thompson, I believe, to stay in the starting lineup for the time being, and they need George Hill to be healthy. Like, we know what LeBron can do against these guys, but if he has to do that against these guys, then they are in really rough shape for the Eastern Conference Finals, where I believe they will be. And so it's about, to me, Kevin Love and, to a lesser extent, J.R. Smith and Kyle Korver.
why do we think that now the role players are going to step up? Now, after the last couple weeks of the regular season in the first series that took them 7 games, now the role players are going to say, all right, joke's over, said Kevin Love. Now I'm going to give you 25 points, and Kyle Korver and George Hill. Well, George Hill was hurt, but the rest of them. Like, what makes it seem like right now LeBron's not going to have to shoulder the entire load?
No, he's going to. I'm going on what happened in the regular season. That's why I don't think they'll make the finals. I don't expect the role players to play great. Don't expect them to play great on the road. We saw what they did when they played at Indiana. If they didn't have home court advantage against the Pacers, they wouldn't be playing. We wouldn't be talking. We'd be talking about, they're going to blow up. Where's LeBron going? What are the choices? Is he going to Philadelphia? That's what we'd be talking about. Now, Toronto, they do have home court advantage. Would I expect the role players to go to Toronto the next 2 games and play well? No, I'd be a fool to. I've been watching the regular season. Now, what I believe a key is George Hill. What's his availability? Because I believe he's a key component to what they're doing. So there's 2 things I'll be watching. We know that Toronto has a tremendous bench. They utilized that in the first series against Washington. Watch the bench scoring. It will be lopsided. But the only way the Cavs can win this series and win game number 1 is watch the starters scoring. Compare the starters score sheet. Watch how many points the starters score, because if the Cavs and starters don't outscore Toronto starters, because we know there's going to be lopsided for the bench scoring. So watch the starters and watch how many points they contribute to LeBron.
When you say you watched the regular season, I know you did, but we're watching the same thing and drawing 2 different conclusions, because based on the regular season, Indiana's simply a worse matchup for Cleveland than Toronto. Indiana and the Cavs played 4 times in the regular season. Indiana won 3 of those. The Cavs played the Raptors 3 times in the regular season. Cavs were 2-1. Like, I think Toronto, while Toronto is a better team over the course of the year than the Pacers, we see this happen sometimes. Some teams are just better matchups than others.
Yeah, and sometimes we make excuses for people when they struggle. And that's what we're doing with the Cavs when they struggled to a 7-game series with the Pacers. We made excuses that, they're a better matchup. They're not really talented. They don't have a bunch of people.
CC, hold on a second, though. I'm not making any excuses, but what
I didn't put you in there.
Okay.
I said people.
Okay, well,
you put yourself in there.
Well, I didn't know. I don't know who else is out here.
Well, we're broadcasting to people.
Okay, sure. If folks out there are making excuses, then I get it. But when you... I don't think it's making excuses. I don't think it's reaching for something to say. It'd be one thing.
Okay, how's George Hill going to play?
What? Hold on. Let me finish the point real quick, and then I'll answer the question. It'd be one thing if the Cavs supporting cast, if Kevin Love, if what he did in the first round was what he did in the regular season. But it's not. Like, that is, I'm not asking for guys to play better than they've played over the course of 90 games. I'm saying, can Kevin Love play better than he played over the course of the last 7? Can Kevin Love be better than what was the worst playoff series of his career? I don't think that's a reach. I don't think that is a 1 in 10 shot. Like, what do I expect from George Hill? I expect George Hill to play Kyle Lowry to not a draw, but right beneath that. I think George Hill...
What if George Hill don't play?
If George Hill doesn't play, then the Cavs going to be in trouble. But I have no reason to believe... George Hill didn't re-injure himself in Game 7. I have no reason to believe...
No, it's back spasm.
I understand.
Like, that's going to be... They're playing every other day. Mm-hmm. You think those back spasms went on vacation?
No, I don't think they went on vacation, but I also think that they...
I believe the back spasm will cause him to miss some time. All right? That's what back spasms do. And with this series with Cleveland, they got a bad draw. They're playing every other night. So LeBron trying to shoulder that load, it can be a burden.
And I'm going to say one other thing. Guys that I will not rely on, though. Jordan Clarkson, absolutely not. Rodney Hood.
What about JR?
Rodney Hood. JR I actually think will be fine. I think JR will be fine. I think JR will be fine. Rodney Hood, it's not just this playoffs.
Who Kyle Korver going to defend?
Let me finish.
You think he's going to get quicker?
Quick. No, but I don't think Kyle Korver's out there to defend. I don't think Kyle Korver's out there to defend. I think Kyle Korver and C.J. Miles, when they're both out there, are both going to try to outshoot each other. I don't think C.J. Miles is going to beat him off the dribble. But I want to say something about Rodney Hood, because Rodney Hood was supposed to be an important trade acquisition. Rodney Hood played 11 playoff games with the Utah Jazz. He shot 36% from the field in those games. He was then unplayable in the first round. So you can't rely on Rodney Hood. You can't rely on Jordan Clarkson. So the bench gets shorter. But I think, for example, tonight, I think they'll start off the game with 4 straight plays to Kevin Love. I think they will try to get him off so LeBron doesn't have to shoulder the load. We'll see if they're able to do it.
Words, LeBron James. Words. LeBron's going to come up big again and probably score 175 points. Coming up, wouldn't bet on it. Are people sleeping on the New York Football Giants? That's next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by former NFL head coach Eric Mangini. Hey, Coach. How you
Good
doing?
morning.
Good
How
to
are
see you,
guys?
Coach.
Was it
How
too,
are
did
you,
I come
sir?
in too hot?
You did. You're just firing. You just, yeah, took me off guard.
I'm just a super
Jenna's
happy,
a bundle of energy
positive
this
person.
morning.
I am.
It's exciting show.
That's it. He didn't
Had
have a
good
second
first
sentence. He
52
had a strong
minutes.
first
No, it was
sentence.
bundle energy. I think
That's where it stopped.
And that's where we.
The energy's firing in all directions, but it's energetic and we love it.
All right, well, since you're here, let's just talk about something football related. If you are a Giants fan, you're probably feeling pretty good about yourself. You got Odell back. You got an awesome running back. Eli's going to bounce back. New head coach, new left tackle. Life is good. And then your friend Vegas calls and tells you he's got the Giants over-under win total at just 6.5 games. Only the Dolphins, Jets, Cardinals, and Browns come in below that. What a bummer. Coach, should I unfriend Vegas on Facebook? And should the Giants be a playoff contender this season?
I think that the Giants have a legitimate shot to go back to the playoffs. So I really do. And I think I have a little bit more faith in Eli than some people do. I like what they did in terms of committing to the offensive line. That's what Gettleman talked about when he came in. He's addressed that. Getting the running back that they did, the expectations that they put on him are pretty high. But if he can establish any type of breakaway or explosive plays for them, which will set up the play action, which I think is one thing that Eli does really well. If Odell can perform at a level that's close to what he's done in the past, the playoffs are reasonable. Now, that being said, it's not easy. It's not easy in that division. It's not easy with trying to create culture change. My experience with going into any organization for the first time is everybody wants change, as long as it's not them that has to change. So how well Pat Schumer is able to do that, to me, is the biggest issue of all.
So the Vegas over-unders, there are certain things that come out of Vegas that I think you mostly disregard. I think Super Bowl odds, especially early in a year, those are mostly just for entertainment purposes. People like to put a few bucks on their team. I think there are certain things you can throw out. The team win totals is, to me, an always interesting indicator of where the general
Coach,
consensus.
just to let you know where I am, it's not one of my highlights. I don't look forward to Vegas coming out with the win totals. A lot like yourself, trying to predict what's going to happen. It is May 1st, right?
Yeah.
It is May 1st.
I just wanted Coach to know that before we went in, because he would think that.
I don't think. I think Coach's gut feeling was probably that you and I are separate on this one. But we are past free agency. We are past the draft. These teams are, while they aren't set in stone and injuries will happen, these are, for the most part, the teams they will be moving forward. And typically, like, it wouldn't surprise anyone, which team does Vegas project to have, like, what has the highest win total? Oh, it's New England at 11. Who are the teams at 10.5? Pittsburgh and Philly. Like, they are about what you would think going into a year. Now, there's always surprises on both ends of it. When I saw the Giants only ahead of the Jets, Dolphins, Browns, and Cardinals, three teams that we think will be starting rookie quarterbacks at some point, and then the Dolphins, who are starting a quarterback coming off an ACL. They don't really know exactly what they're doing there. What it said to me is, oh, well, so the idea of that this was the Giants' opportunity to go do a reset on the franchise, go get their young quarterback, go try to, even if they're going to start Eli, have that process started, was a missed opportunity for them. They've got the best player in the draft, right? The most talented player in the draft. The guy that was the cleanest prospect in the draft by a lot of draft nicks. I know you weren't necessarily 100% sold, but that's how Saquon Barkley was sold for a lot of people, what a lot of people thought. And they still got the projected to win the fewest games in their division. They've got Odell coming back, theoretically. They signed their left tackle. They've got that defense they spent a ton of money on. Almost all those pieces coming back except for JPP, who they move on from. And 8 wins would be exceeding the expectations. It just jumped off the page to me. It struck me that, is that where the Giants are? And if it is that about Eli? Like, what is that an indication about?
To me, it's an indication of how well all those pieces are going to fit. So you bring in a lot of different guys, and you assume that they're going to achieve at a certain level. You assume that they're going to give you a certain amount of leadership. But when the person gets in the locker room, it's not what you expected. It's the same thing with the draft picks. Sometimes those draft picks hit right away. You look at a guy like Ezekiel Elliott, that triggers right away. And some guys, it takes a year or two. I know when we drafted Brickshaw Ferguson, his first year at left tackle, it was a struggle. It was a constant struggle. Then it's how well do the guys respond to the coaching staff? How well do they respond to the new things they're being asked to do? How well does this offense stick? The defense, I know they spent a lot of money on it, but do these guys fit with the new scheme, or is it something that these parts they don't make sense with what the Giants are trying to do.
One reason why I like watching New England and studying New England is in the offseason, they don't have numbers on the players at practice. You know the reason why? Because it don't matter. Don't matter who they are, don't matter what they are. The thing is, can they learn? Can the new things that we try to do or our staple of things that we do, how good are they at doing it? In this new NFL, with the amount of turnover that we see on rosters, like, it's impossible to predict May the 1st how many games a team is going to win. With New England, with all the holes they have, Vegas just has faith in them. So for me, it's not one of the highlights. To me, they missed so much on it. And I've been on too many teams that I know that they didn't know. So I was on teams when these numbers came out, and I was like, wow, they don't know our team. They're not in this locker room. They don't know we don't have any chemistry. They don't know the extent of the rehab for the players in the offseason, where that rehab is. Is he close to coming back on schedule? Like, so there's so many other it's a guess to me, and I don't like to guess.
Well, but then take Vegas out of it. How much did the Giants shore themselves up for next year? How many games do you think they could win?
Before last season, we had the Giants as a playoff team. We thought they would win 10 games. They had a horrific season, all right? They had a number of injuries. You can't account for that. So the defense, you can't account for the amount of money and the lack of productivity. So now they got a new coach. How do we know what's going to happen? What type of defense they're going to run? How do we know? There's so many things that we don't know about the Giants. They do have a left tackle. Yeah. They do have Barkley. How are they going to use him? What type of runner will he be between the tackles? Those things. Are they going to put Odell at the X receiver where they had Brandon Marshall? Is Sterling Shepard? Are they going to be a pro set? Is the tight end going to be flexed out because he's not a great blocker? So all those things, we have zero information besides these numbers, and we're just putting these names, we'll put them on paper.
And when we won the Super Bowl, our first Super Bowl in New England, we were 60-1 odds in Vegas to go to the Super Bowl. At that point, we had brought in 24 veteran free agents, and none of them were high price. They were all guys that were those second and third week type of guys. And we started out 1-3. But something, we were able to trigger it. Things changed dramatically. We were coming off a 5-11 season. They couldn't wait to run us out of town, but it changed. And you look at Ben McAdoo. His first year, he goes to the playoffs. His second year, he gets fired. So things can change dramatically. It's just about how well it fits initially.
And we know that every year there's a team that surprises you, that comes out of nowhere.
Teams.
Sure, and that one team that's really comes out of nowhere. The point that I'm making is I wouldn't have gone into this year, or I'm not going into this year, thinking if the Giants win 10 games, that's a team that came out of nowhere. Right? That's a team that surprises you. When you look at the teams, just real quick, there's 8 teams projected to win 6.5 games or fewer. Arizona, Cleveland, Miami, the Jets, Buffalo, Chicago, Indy, Tampa Bay, and then the Giants, so it's 9. Like, all of those teams, I'm like, oh, yeah, I'd be surprised if Chicago gets to 10 wins. Like, wow, that's a hell of a year. If Tampa Bay turns it around, like the fact that the Giants are in that group is what stood out to me, because I don't look at them talent-wise, and they don't look at themselves talent-wise when they're running it back with Eli, to be in that group of teams that are either all starting rookie, second year, or quarterbacks coming off an injury. Every single one of those teams is in that situation.
But the biggest mistake any team can do is to look ahead. That to me is the thing that kills you all the time. Whenever you start trying to envision where you're going to be at the end of the season, that's when you get lost. The most important thing those guys can do is go in, listen to what Pat's trying to get done, make sure you embrace the vision of what the team's going to be, and then work at the same level every single day. You start looking forward, and you're done.
All right, Coach. We're going to see you a little bit later on in the show. Coming up, talk some basketball. How are the Boston Celtics able to upset the Sixers? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. We're now joined by NBA champ Antoine Walker. Hey, Antoine.
Good to see you.
Thanks for hanging out.
I ain't going to bring it up.
Don't do that.
I don't know what
Dare I care to ask? You guys
No, definitely not.
No.
Is it me or is it Nick?
No, it's something about Chicago is all I know. Oh, my goodness.
I was
Jenna
betting
Wolfe's
$500. Give it to me. She
Oh,
was going to cough before the segment was up.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Let me help you out here, Jenna, while you get it. I got you. Sixers and Celtics open up the round 2 series last night.
Most people looked at the MASH unit, that is both myself and the injured and depleted Boston team, and said, there's no way the Celtics can win this. Those same people looked at the Sixers team and said they're stronger and healthier. There's no way the Sixers can lose this. Well, both things happened. The Celtics won 117-101, and the Sixers lost by that same score. Despite 31 out of Joel Embiid, Celtics got 29 points out of Terry Rozier, 28 out of Jason Tatum. Antoine, you watch this start to finish. How were the Celtics able to just dominate the Sixers in Game 1?
Well, first, the three-point line. I mean, you don't put the Celtics on making 17 threes. They make 17 threes and obviously dominate from the three-point line. But then the effort and energy that they played with last night was second to none. Looked like a team that just played a 7-game series. They looked fresh, ready to go out of playing basketball. Don't want to make excuses for Philly because Boston plays so well, but when you sit for 6 days, you don't play. You got a young group that's never been in this position before, don't understand the magnitude of a second round of the playoffs. They got smacked in the face.
Well, and I understand the layoff part. And if you're Philly, you're playing the best basketball collectively that you've ever played. It's not just since Christmas. It was the 20 out of 21 that you mentioned. But the flip side to that is Boston just had to play a grueling 7-game series. And in the 7th game of that series, the guy who played the best for them in that series, other than maybe Al Horford, Jaylen Brown, hurts himself, and he's out for Game 1. So I understand the layoff's not ideal. I get all of that. But this is a game that Philly, I think, is going to look back on and say, we got out-schemed. Yes, absolutely. Boston hit shots. We didn't hit shots. But some of that, the reason that they didn't hit shots was the scheme Boston put out there, that we're not going to double Joel Embiid. We're just, you know what, if Joel Embiid gets his 30 points, we're going to deal with it. What we're not going to do is help off the shooters. What we're not going to do is allow you to do what we saw them do to Miami in 2 of those games, which is just rain 3-pointers on them and win the game that way. Like, I thought Boston, of course, they executed well. Rozier was outstanding, as was Horford, as was Jason Tatum. We saw, again, Marcus Smart give you those intangible energy plays. But they went into this game with an ideal game plan that's going to cause, I would think, Brett Brown to have to adjust some things going into Game 2.
I don't think it's scheme. I think they will adjust. The coach said after the game that they didn't execute the game plan. Joel Embiid said at the press conference, man, we were prepared, but we didn't do what we were supposed to do. Let me tell you what's not scheme. Ben Simmons having more turnovers than field goals. All right? Now, that's not scheme. You know what that is? That's a young guy who had a lot of time off, and coming into the intensity of the Boston arena, man, they weren't ready for that. Question for you. I have 2 questions. The role players in Boston, I told them, since I've been watching NBA 40 years, the role players have always played great at home in Boston with that crowd. You've been in really competitive series with Boston, in Boston. Explain some of that energy that the role players, what they get, and some of the same thing you got late in your career when you were in Miami. I was a season ticket holder there. What does that mean for role players and that energy they get from the crowd?
It's second to none. I mean, that's what role players do. They play well at home. They got their family. They got their friends. The fans are cheering for the loose ball, dabbling on the floor. You don't necessarily have to make a bucket. So it's especially in Boston, because you got real, true sports fans that understand the nuances of the game, the hard work that goes into it. Marcus Smart can be a legend in Boston because of how hard he plays and all the intangible things he's done. I remember playing with a guy, Walter McCarty, energy guy. They loved him in Boston. But the one thing that the Celtics, that Terry Rozier and those guys, they got to understand that Philly is a young team. They was not prepared, and they got a lot of open shots. That will change.
A lot.
This will change in Game 2. I'm a Boston guy. I love the Celtics. That's my old team. I look at it as my second home. But Philly will win this in 5.
Oh, in 5?
Yeah, they'll get this done.
Wow.
They'll get this done in 5. I just think this is a wake-up call for them. They're more talented. They can shoot the 3 ball. They don't have to hit the threes to win. You can't give Joel Embiid 30 points and think you're going to win.
Right.
They're not going to lose too many games like that. And they're not going to shoot as bad as they did from the 3-point line the way they did. I think Boston's too hurt. Jaylen Brown, when he does come back, is not going to be 100%. I don't think they have enough. I mean, they made shots last night. They fed off the energy from Game 7. I think now Philly has 2 days to prepare, and they're gonna make the proper adjustments. And Boston can't win in Philly. Philly's one of those places just like Boston. They're just very tough to play. The fans are going to be on you, and they play great in that building. They remind me, they're starting to get that crowd like Golden State had a couple years ago, where it was just an intimidating place to play. So I like Philly to win the next 4 games.
Well, just before we move ahead, let's just look back to last night. And you made this point, which I thought was interesting. They did have some time off. They did enter a moment that was bigger than any of them on that team were prepared for. And it looked like it might have just gotten a little bit away from them. It looked like the moment was just a little too big for them. Is that what you saw last night? If you take away the things like the shots weren't hitting, and maybe that's all sort of a product of them getting prepared for what a lot of them were in for the first time.
Even though they beat Miami, that still was a tough series.
Yes.
That was a very tough series. Then he had 6 days off. Chris, you followed us in Miami when we won in 2006. It reminds me, obviously, both of these teams are young, so I don't want to put that in that same category. But we played the Chicago Bulls the first round. Took us 6 games. Tough series.
We're down, right?
Yeah, we were down.
LeBron hit the shot.
No,
that was Cleveland when he hit the shot against
This is the baby Bulls, Ben Gordon,
Yes.
Kirk Heinrich. In the year we won the championship in 2006, and they took us 6 games. We played the New Jersey Nets, second round, first game. We get smacked. But we win the next 4 games. It was a wake-up call. But you come out of those tough series, and I know it's 5 games, so people don't understand that. But this is a young group that has to figure out how tough it's going to be game in and game out. But talent-wise, top to bottom, and where they at, they're going to beat Boston. Boston's too hurt.
You mentioned, and I said yesterday that for Boston to win the series, I think Philly would have to suffer some significant injury because the talent discrepancy is so enormous. Like Boston, we know their 2 best players. One of their other best players didn't play last night. But there is one other wrinkle they threw at Ben Simmons yesterday, which I thought was smart. They kept rotating big bodies on Ben Simmons, and it's why it was only the 7th time all year he had more turnovers, equal or more turnovers than he did assists. Like Ben Simmons, for the first time these playoffs, his lack of ability to shoot actually bit him. And for Philadelphia, the one word of caution I would say for them is this. They've played 6 playoff games this year. 4 of them, they've hit 7 or fewer threes. The idea that they won't have another instance where they're cold from three-point land, they had 3 of those instances against Miami. Now, they were so much more talented than Miami. In 2 of them, they were able to get wins. But they've gone cold from 3 before in the playoffs. They've been able to overcome it. Last night, they weren't.
I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.